Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Welcome, everybody. As you know, I'm your resident coach, Paul, here to teach session fundamentals. This week, we're going to be going over muscular endurance and endurance in general. As usual, everybody knows this is a safe space, so feel free to ask whatever silly questions are on your mind. No one's going to judge you harshly. We're just going to do our best to try to figure stuff out. All right, everybody cool with that? So for today, going over endurance, there's going to be a couple of main goals that we're going to try to achieve with today. One is to familiarize ourselves with the training principles of endurance, and then we're going to try to learn how to utilize those principles and understand the programs in the portal a little bit better. Right? So that's going to be like our main goal: understand the principles, how to implement them, looking at the program portal, understanding how these principles apply, how they implemented them in the portal. Anyone have any questions? Well, we're going to start with an activity. We're going to then go through the slides, and we're going to finish with the case study. Okay? Sounds good? Everybody, go ahead and come up here and grab 2.5 pound weights. Alright, y'all can stand up. And evenly space out just a little bit. And everybody just hold the weights out horizontal. And you're just going to hold the weights out as long as possible. And we're going to see you can hold them out the longest. Alright? Can you just slide a little bit? Can I mind this? My shirt blends into the pole. Alright, cool. Excellent. Silas, you can look at me. Thank you. So, can we click on through to the next slide, please?
That's really impressive.
Alright, so, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Alright, so Marcus, you're going to start by reading the first slide.
Okay, training method.
No, you can move up a little closer.
Training method that aims to increase the efficiency of energy metabolism, improve the body's ability to use nutrients to create energy, and increase the body's ability to withstand physical activity for long durations. Why? This occurs through complex modifications in muscle metabolism with increased mitochondrial and oxidized enzymes. The machinery necessary for energy production. Shifts in fiber type and increased capillary.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcus. You can go back to work.
I thought we were like take my mind off it.
It's actually like a challenge to do this and try to focus on something else, right? So I appreciate you going on a limb there for us. So what does that mean to everybody? Does anyone want to put that into like your own words?
You know, I was really paying attention.
Oh, we're not really paying attention. Okay, so Will, what is endurance training?
Endurance training, like training to see if your muscles can last a little longer doing a particular activity rather than like training that
I feel you shouting.
Right, there's a key word in there, right? Longer, right? Duration. This is the key principle that we're going to be trying to work with, or the key variable with endurance training. Alright, we're going to hold up the longest breath. That's a little bit later weight, so we won't count. We'll throw that out there. So to me, there's a couple of key main ideas that you can take away from this. One is, you're extracting more energy from the same amount of nutrients, right? When they talk about increasing efficiency of metabolism, you're getting the same amount of oxygen, but you're just able to create more ATP from the same amount of oxygen. So that's one of the adaptations. Alright, they're holding out strong.
Tell you, that's only.
And now, that's second. Alright, this one out of Timber.
Yeah.
Excellent job. So, why did we choose about duration, right? It's a lightweight, so you're not really like challenging your maximum strength. It's all about how long can you hold it. And if you look at this second paragraph right here, there's a couple of key things that they talk about, right? Mitochondrial density and oxidative enzymes, infrastructure that are allowing you to utilize oxygen to create more ATP, to utilize the same amount of oxygen to create more ATP, right? Fiber type and increased capillarization of muscle fibers. So how does increased capillarization of muscle fibers help you if you're going like this? So like your
Heart is able to more efficiently get the blood to whatever muscles.
yeah, exactly, right? So the capillaries are what? It's the bridge between the artery to the muscle, and then from the muscle back to the vein, right? So the more pathways the blood can travel to get into the muscle and out of the muscle, the longer you're going to be able to hold, because you're going to be able to get more energy in and out faster, right? So if you guys have more capillaries in your shoulders, you'll still be holding them up. All right, let's go to the next slide. Alright, who wants to read this next slide? Silence, thank you.
What is endurance training? Typically performed at submaximal intensity, may progressively move the anaerobic threshold. In other words, the beginning of anaerobic metabolism and lactate production towards higher exercise intensity. What types of programs need endurance blocks? And what might a client ask for in their own groups?
Thank you. So we'll go through those questions in a second, but first just through this paragraph right here. Does anyone have any questions about that? Submaximal intensity, right? So endurance training is done at a low intensity. Moving the anaerobic threshold. What does that mean to you all? Did anybody start to feel a burning in their shoulders?
Yes.
Yes. Right? So that would, when you start to feel the burning, that's an indicator that past your anaerobic threshold, suddenly anaerobic metabolites are building up, lactic acid, hydrogen ions, and so forth. Right? So by being able to hold your arms out longer, moving up your anaerobic threshold means that you don't have that feeling longer. You increase the capillary density, you can cycle the blood through quicker, suddenly it goes longer before you feel the buildup of the chemicals that cause the burn. Does that make sense to everybody? What types of programs need endurance blocks? Alright, we're gonna go up with a few different ones. So people time to participate.
Yeah.
As if you haven't already.
For sure, programs for like athletes, I feel like they definitely need endurance block, especially once for games like soccer, basketball, things where they have to go for long periods of time.
Sure. Okay. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Soccer and basketball? What kind of athletes would those be considered?
Endurance athletes. Or I don't know what else besides that.
So like, if they're endurance athletes, then what is a marathon?
Yeah.
Right? So they're kind of somewhere in the middle, but they have aspects of endurance, but there's aspects of explosiveness. Right? And that's something that we're gonna get into a little bit further down the line, is that like, you don't just train endurance for endurance.
Yeah.
But yes, they definitely do need to have endurance. You know, they need to have more capillary density, they need to have more mitochondrial density to be able to go at full speed for longer. Which we don't run past some of that. Anyways, tough subject right now. But so what's another example?
Let's say a boxer,
Dope.
like they have very use of high endurance because rounds like 3 minutes, so around 3 minutes, constantly moving around, constantly have to it feels like a minute, so it's a lot of endurance involved.
Definitely. Definitely. And that's regular endurance, but even a more advanced, specific type of power endurance, right? You think power is like long rest for the most power. The boxer doesn't have that luxury because he's gonna get punched, you know? So he has to have power and endurance at the same time. So it's just something to keep in mind. We'll get into a little bit later on in the slides. Some more examples. Swimmers. Open ocean.
Open ocean or even Olympics that do
Just at a certain point, it becomes endurance, right? Like, what is that point exactly? It's like 2 to 5 minutes, maybe. An event lasts that long, it becomes endurance. So anything that lasts really that long. But beyond just athletes,
I feel like everyone, or like it could be helpful for anybody to have an endurance part, like walk program.
that is a great answer, and yes. Essentially, everyone, if they're training, at some point, endurance training is going to benefit them as far as like muscular endurance training. And then like everyone should be doing some sort of cardio training. You know, so we're going to distinguish also between like endurance cardio and muscular endurance. Muscular endurance is kind of like localized. That's where you get like specific capillary density to your quads. You know, whereas cardio training, you get the systemic benefit of your heart. Both are important, right? Everyone should be doing cardio basically all the time, I would argue. But then everyone can have endurance blocks at some point. I would argue that endurance blocks, or something like an endurance block, would be important for a beginner. You know, like we've all heard that you build up volume first before you increase the weight. So to me, that is building up the endurance. It's like the foundation that you build off of. People that are looking to train for like longevity, or they're looking to improve their health span, you know. How many of you guys are familiar with VO2 max? And the relationship with VO2 max and healthy aging. Are you guys all familiar with this? Alright, so not to get too deep into the weeds, but essentially, the higher your VO2 max, your VO2 max declines over time. At a certain point in life, or at a certain point, your VO2 max may be below a certain threshold where you can no longer live independently. So if your VO2 max declines at a certain rate, and at a certain point you can no longer live independently, you want to make your VO2 max as high as possible so that it's as long and as far into the future before you reach that point where you are no longer. Does that make sense to everyone? And actually, you mentioned something I was going to point out: power athletes, specifically like boxers. Well, what about like a football player? You know, a play lasts like what, 5 to 10 seconds. So you think that's a power athlete, but you're actually doing it 100 times. So you need endurance to it, right? So like, just because someone does a power sport, like a pitcher, power movement, they're throwing 100 pitches, they're going to need some endurance. Let's move along to the next slide. Alright, periodization of endurance. Now, in terms of understanding this slide, I think that it's beneficial to think of it in terms of training for a 5K. Right? So that's the prism that we're going to look at this at. It's like cardio training for a 5K. Let's look at this periodization model. Who wants to read this slide? I'm doing a lot of talking. Justin?
Awesome. Periodization of endurance. Progressions of periodization for endurance athletes. 1. Preparatory, base. 2. Pre-competition, build. 3. Competition, race. 4. Transition, off-season. Standard method. 3-week build that should be followed by a 1-week recovery cycle. Reverse methods. Begin with a higher load and gradually decreases through the cycle. Examples of both methods on the following slide.
Thank you. What does that mean to you? Does anyone want to explain this slide to me? Right.
So progressing to periodization
preparatory is kind of before you go preseason, you do some pre-training just to prepare yourself so you don't get hurt in preseason. And then preseason you train to the level that you want to get to for your competition. So when you do get your competition, you either do better or what you've done in the past. Your goal is to do better than what you did in preseason, but it's kind of to prepare you for that. And then transition is to give yourself a deload after.
Love it. I love it. Does that make sense? We don't have anything to add. Cool. So I like to think of this as like a pyramid, especially with the first three things. The transition is not really part of the pyramid, but if you imagine a pyramid, the preparatory is the base, which the base is obviously the largest part at the bottom. Depending on a person, they may or may not already have a base, depending on their situation. You may have somebody that you're training on a regular basis, they come to you and say they want to run 5K. You can, depending on when the race is, potentially go into the build cycle. Right? Does that make sense? So the middle section of the pyramid is going to be the build cycle, and then the top period is the competition. That's just the one singular event. Right? And then following that singular event, you begin the recovery. Right? Why is periodization important? Do you guys use periodization at all in your programming? So it's like the idea of long-term programming, right?
It is, not to interrupt, but it's good to at least track the progress of progressing, like, like Kabasi progression of basically watching if it has to, if some point, progression of it, the low part of it.
Yeah, so that's an important part of it, is just like being able to systematically move forward in the program towards an end goal. And that's one of the key parts, is actually to begin with the end in mind, I would say. So when you're coming up with your program for people, think about where they want to get to. Right? And that's, then you start to build a roadmap of how to get them there based off of where they are now. Right? You're getting someone from A to B. And you think about, what is a coach? Like the original, as far as I understand it, word for coach was like a guy who drives a boat, right? Drives people around, takes people from A to B. So we as coaches take people from A to B, and our expertise is how we can come up with a plan that's going to get them there most efficiently and safely. Now, I skipped a question on the last slide, so I'm going to go back because I thought that was a good question. The question is, what might a client ask for in their own words that makes you think endurance training?
Oh, I just want to be a little bit more, let's say, when I add activity, I'm going to have some more endurance for older ladies run around my ranch.
Perfect. That's one of the best ones. You start putting your grandkids and they tire you out, and that's a wake up call for a lot of people. And that's motivation for a lot. Anybody else?
I want to go more
I want to go more exercise. Perfect. Anybody else?
I feel like getting tired and like going for a walk or like walking up the stairs. They're like every minute to do that.
Yeah. Perfect. Anything where we say, I get tired, ... or like, I need more energy for XYZ, no brainer. Endurance is like where you need to be. Maybe not exclusively, but at least to a large portion of it.
Oh, that's what I wanted to say about the periodization part. It's good to like watch the progression. So basically watching somebody move up in a certain way or move up in a certain movement in a certain way. So you have to kind of break it down a little bit for them. Especially when it comes down to the beginning of it, prepping for the preseason, like you can actually pay attention to the movement before you can advance over to the preseason part.
Exactly. Like, systematically progressing people forward towards their goal. You can be a lot more efficient with your progress if you have a plan. You know, so that's the basic idea. Have a plan, right? We're not just coming up with random stuff every week. We're building off what we've done the week before. Alright, let's move on to the next slide. Standard periodization versus reverse periodization of endurance. So we talked a little bit about standard periodization, reverse periodization in the last slide. Why don't you go back? Get a little context about that. So, standard method, 3-week build that should be followed by a 1-week recovery cycle. Notice there's no time period for the competition, right? Because that's just one day. Reverse method, however, begins with a higher load and gradually decreases throughout the cycle. Meaning, regular periodization moves into reverse, where you start with a lower load and gradually increase throughout the cycle. Right? So, who might a reverse periodization model be good for? Meaning you start your training with a higher load and you ramp it down leading into the competition.
Can this, I would say, can this still go from the box, or does it say like that a little bit before the fight, it slows down a little bit? Like obviously the running plays involved, the race plays involved, the highest sparring plays involved, but once it gets closer to the fight day, everything completely slows down, it's slowly more rest, more recovery in that sense.
Right? Someone who wants to have a little bit less strenuous work right before the event, right? There could be any number of reasons why someone would want that. Like, one that comes off the top of my mind is the more experienced competitor, who doesn't need to spend super amount of time like ramping up to get their max peak right before the race. Like, they're already pretty good. They're gonna go hard in training and like make sure that they're super healthy going into that competition. Right? Whereas if it's like your first race, you might be ramping up right until the last day. There's people who do a 22-mile run like 2 weeks before their first marathon.
Like a perfect example probably would be somebody that doesn't compete or train all year round, but if his fights come up, within like 4 to 6 weeks before the fight, he's already doing what he has to do, preparing himself for the title pressure.
Exactly. With Mayweather, you probably can do a reverse periodization. And in his case, he's going to go all the rounds because he's just dodging punches, not even knocking anybody out.
And that itself takes a lot of endurance.
Definitely takes endurance and a lot of skill, but I'm going to still crochet that.
The Pacquiao thing?
I like him. I like Pacquiao, but like, that's not the reason why I dislike Mayweather. Alright, let's move on to the next slide. So this is a representation of the periodization model in a graph form, right? So this is the traditional, start at a lower volume, increase the volume, and then the race is less volume than here. Whereas in the reverse model, you start with the highest amount of volume and you ramp it down before reaching the race. Now, the reason why I said that this is more appropriate and applicable to like a 5K runner than like a marathoner is because this model means that they're running 30 miles the week before the marathon, right? I don't know many people who do that. Now, I'm not saying that they won't benefit if they did do that, but good luck getting them to do it. So like for a 5K, you can get someone to run, 5 miles before their race. And that's probably a good thing. I wouldn't necessarily use that model when programming someone for a marathon. Just throw that. Does anyone else have any interpretation of this? Sure. So how does word verse come?
I guess then going full sprint before they have their freestyle
that's a good segue into our next slide. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide and see what that has to say here. So the idea here is actually going to be a little bit different, I believe. You don't want to be going maximum intensity right before the race, right? So you were talking about intensity. What we're talking about is duration, right? So you might be going for farther than your marathon, but you're not going to try to run faster or at your marathon pace like the week before. So like when you talk about intensity, it's going to be a little bit different, right? But to move on to the slide, we'll see how it relates and wants to go. Who hasn't read the slide yet?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then give me what it means to you, some interpretation.
yeah. Progressive overload of endurance. Preparatory. Volume, moderate to high. Intensity, low. Pre-competition. Volume, moderate. Intensity, moderate to high. Taper, volume, low to moderate. Intensity, moderate to high. Competition, volume, low to moderate. Intensity, high. Transition, volume, low. Intensity, low. Yeah.
So I actually want to apologize first. Marcus made a point that it is reflected here. Pre-competition intensity should be high. So you were right. Sorry to interrupt, but
You're good. I think, yeah, all of this seems to be more to just be about, while trying to increase your threshold for how far you can go or how whatever your endurance sport is, whether it's muscular endurance, power endurance, cardiovascular endurance, it seems to be more about managing fatigue. And that's why we kind of include the intensity and the volume in there so that we can push fatigue a little bit, getting closer to competition, or so like manage fatigue, for example, in the competition, we don't want a whole bunch of volume, so that's why they're saying go to moderate, but the intensity is going to be high on whatever we do. Or like reaching up to pre-competition, we want to start kind of ramping up a little bit, so we're doing a little bit more moderate to high intensity and moderate volume. Whereas preparatory, we don't want to just go in at super high intensity. That could be a case for injury or kind of taking ourselves out. So that's why the intensity is low, but the volume is high to get in the movement, to get in the practice, whatever we're doing.
love it. Good. Anyone have anything to add to that? Right, so like moving from prep to pre-pump, moderate to high to moderate, right? So the volume's going to go down a little bit, but the intensity is going to go up. Right? So here you're like at the building of the infrastructure, right? All those capillaries and the mitochondria that we're talking about. Whereas here you kind of have all the infrastructure. You're just getting more efficient at using it. You're increasing the intensity that you attempt to use, right? Building up to that competition where, you know, I would argue that a marathon is probably a high volume, you know, but the intensity is high. Or it's that's the main thing. You're gonna, no matter what the volume is, the intensity is high because you have endurance. Right? That's the whole idea. Anyone else have anything to add? All right, next slide. All right, energy systems 101. Who's going to go here? All right, so before we get into this, you guys know about the energy systems. So somebody tell me something about pick an energy system. Tell me a little bit about it. Justin.
ATP PC system, used for power.
Used for power. Perfect. What is used for endurance? Aerobic. Perfect. Right? And what's the energy system in the middle? Sure, it is an anaerobic energy system, right? So there are two anaerobic energy systems, meaning they do not use oxygen. One of them, you listed, creatine phosphate, or phosphocreatine, whatever you want to call it. The Second one would be the glycolytic, right? Where you're using like sugar.
On the back.
Yeah, so each of these is distinguished because they both hit different muscle fibers, they last for different amounts of time, they're all beneficial for different situations, right? So creatine phosphate, tell me a little bit about it. It's fast.
Found the muscles.
So it's found in the muscles. So like you go to do something really fast, you just decide to do it, you go full speed, your muscles are going to use creatine phosphate because that's readily available in the muscle, ready to go, you don't have to do any sort of, synthetic, right? You keep doing that movement, what is going to be the next energy system to take over? Which one? Carbs. Exactly. Like what? So, the creatine phosphate system lasts for what? 10 to 30 seconds? Maybe less than 30 seconds? Then the carb system lasts for what? Yeah, like a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, depending on your person, right? And then what takes over? You're burning, you're oxidizing fat, right? So fast. But you're using oxygen, okay? So it's the anaerobic system. So there's like a bridge here, right? From readily available, runs out quick, creatine phosphate. Then takes a little bit longer, not super efficient, and doesn't last forever, but it can bridge the gap from immediate to long term, right? And then you're using oxygen for your long term energy production, right? Because you can make more ATP from the fuel source by using oxygen in the synthesis, right? Does that make sense to everyone? What energy system have we been talking about today? Air. Thank you. We can go on to the next slide. Who's going to read this one? Alright, that's so, thank you guys. What does that mean to everybody? So one thing, go ahead, Marcus.
It's a guideline. Like it gives you a way I get to know exactly what to go for, like what you get out of it, what to push for when you do it. Like for example, with vaccine, shrimp is letting you know 75%.
Yeah, exactly. So it's giving you really good specific protocols that you can implement, right? Now, is 75 to 95% 1 RM endurance training? No. But what are they saying here? That training, that style of strength training is beneficial to your aerobic energy system, right? Because that's also going to increase your heart rate. Everybody in here is deadlifted and felt their heart rate up, right? That's going to have some positive effect. Now, power endurance, we talked about this a little bit. Ability to exercise movements, power over time, right? Any athlete, basically, who does a power sport, unless you're like a designated hitter, right? If they literally just swing once, sit down for an hour.
That's how tiny the last
So, we've been talking a lot about endurance, right? But like training for cardio. But there is specific muscle endurance training too, which we kind of touched on as like localized benefits to the muscle tissues and the fibers. So we talked a little bit about how strength training helps the aerobic system. But why else might like an endurance athlete need strength training?
You strengthen them because more like you can have no endurance tomorrow, but if he, let's say, for this soccer player, if they run down the ball, they don't have the strength to, let's say, dribble the ball and stop runs.
Right. Right. Well, yeah.
Well, strength training, especially for like maximum strength, also allows our central nervous system to adapt and to take a little bit more to be better at improving our musculature. So, especially for muscular endurance, I feel like how sets us up to be more efficient with that kind of training.
By like stressing our bodies, it improves our body's ability to withstand stress. Like whether it comes from slightly different angles. Yeah, right. Look,
You have more muscle in your body, and you're not doing that all the time, and you're not overload.
there.
You do exert a lot of energy when you do long distance or endurance training, and then once you have, your body overloads it.
Injury prevention. So for me, I've had several people training for marathons. I do strength training. We're not doing endurance, muscular endurance. You know, they're getting enough endurance work in their marathon training. They need for it to be strong so that they can support all the miles that they put onto their body without getting injured. So that's something to keep in mind. Each of you might have someone who comes in, so they want to do a 10K or a half marathon or something. You might think initially I'm going to do high volume workouts. There's no high volume that's going to beat the volume that they're getting from their training either run. So you want them to be strong to withstand that. Right? So that's just another thing. Very good. Alright, move on to the next slide. And we'll have a little activity here. Alright, so who's going to read this one? Julie?
Specificity of endurance. 80-20 principle. 80% of the weekly training time should be done at an easy effort level. Aerobic, with 20% consistent harder anaerobic. Maximum strength training through the energy system continuum.
Right. So strength training through the energy system continuum, meaning like lifting weights for endurance rep ranges, for hypertrophy rep ranges, and for strength rep ranges. Right? You want to cycle through all of them for most people. 80-20. What does that mean? 80% of what? 20% of what?
80% of your weekly training should be to accumulate aerobic system instead of max intensity.
Right. So what, like, if it's not max intensity, then what would you call that 80%?
Maybe doing like a lower intensity jog on the treadmill for an hour.
Perfect example. So we know this as like steady state training or zone 2, right? Does anyone know how to give their clients rudimentary instructions so that they can train in zone 2?
Say if you don't have anything to track it, say the talk test is always kind of good.
Exactly, right? So what does the talk test?
Basically, once you reach a certain point where they're rolling, running, doing sort of endurance type training, where they're not able to have a conversation with you because their body is focused so much on trying to breathe and get out
right? Zone two, rudimentary way of thinking about it is that once they reach the point where the sentences are like beyond choppy, it's like you cannot talk, you're no longer zone two. Kind of the limit is when you're at your choppy sentences, right? So if you can get somebody to the point where they can kind of speak, but you know that they're exercising based on how they're speaking to you, and have them maintain that for a period of time, that's going to be zone two. And that's going to be where people are going to really get the heart benefits and blood vessel benefits, like elasticity. Right? One of the main things that we want is that their heart and blood vessels to be really elastic. Right? Anyone have questions about any of that? Cool. Yes, please.
So, based on heart rate, right? If someone has a higher heart rate, but gets really, really tough, how does that affect? Because sometimes I've taken people, say, walking, step by step, and I tell them check their heart rate. And I can tell that their body is fighting, but they're talking to me, and then I check their heart rate, it's like 80 seconds, and I'm like, okay, decrease. How does that?
I would want to get more data to say specifically, like everybody's heart rate training zones are different. So some people's zone two is really high. Instead of VO2 max, that's on you. Yeah. Actually, your zone two is like 150 beats per minute. So like, it can vary from person to person. Maybe he's fit enough where that is his zone two. Maybe he's fit enough where that is his zone two. And so that's where 80% of the training should be done. The other 20% should be like zone 4 to zone 5, which is like 85% maximum, right? So how would you train the 20%? Someone give me just like a basic, how would you train zone 5?
Sprints for just really for a distance, like maximum effort, or for like a short amount of time, and then rest to do that for like a couple seconds.
Right? So like distance intervals is how I think of it. Perfect. Does everyone understand that principle? So like, you put somebody on a treadmill, you have them go at a speed that they can't sustain, but for a period of time that they can sustain it. Right? And then you drop them down to a recovery pace for X amount of time. And you do it again. Right? Where the top level gets them up to that near 100%. Makes sense? Simple enough. It's grueling, but it gets the results. So, we're going to finish out with a little case study. So, I'm going to give you an example of a client, and then we're going to come up with a program for them together. Right? So, this client is a 35-year-old woman. She has no contraindications. And it's not written down anywhere. I'm just reading this to you, I made it up. Right? So, she is 145 pounds, 28% body fat, does strength training on her own, and now she is your client. She wants to run her first 5K, and she wants to do it in under 30 minutes. So, my questions for you all are, first, how many days would you program strength training versus how many days would you program cardio?
How many days did she do it? Did she say how many days she did it?
Well, how many would you program? So in the program portal, they don't ask people how many days they should do. We tell them how many days they need to reach their goal. Okay?
I would probably do at least 2 days dedicated to strength training and 3 days dedicated to endurance training. That was perfect.
Does that make sense to everybody? Anyone disagree? Yeah, that's what I wrote down. 2 days a week strength training, 3 days a week cardio. Now, what do those cardio days look like? So we're going to go with week 1 of her cardio training. Okay? Week 1 of her cardio training has 3 days of cardio training. What do those 3 days look like?
Like different intensities.
Well, because she's
Well, what did we just see? You can go back to the last slide.
Or, oh, most days
she has no cardio background,
Yeah.
right? So 80% low intensity, long duration, low intensity, repetitive movement. Right? So for her, she wants to run. So what does day one of her week one program look like?
So she has no background in it.
Correct. She wants to run a 5K in under 30 minutes, and the 5K is 1 month from now. Or we'll say 2 months.
Because running does take a lot of toll on your body, and since yours everything that starts off running, you might get injured, and then with walking, she can do that probably for a long time. Go from there, see how she goes from there.
Cool. So that's day one, walking on the treadmill. Give me those specifics.
Depends on what kind of what she likes to do. She likes to go on walks outside. She likes to walk on the treadmill. Some people don't like to walk on the treadmill. Some people like to walk outside. She can walk longer outside to see different scenes and she can walk 45 minutes outside, or walk on the treadmill for watch something. Depends on
Cool. Right? So yeah, if you can program something for someone that they like versus something that they don't like, and they're very similar, obviously you pick the one that they don't like, right? We're training mental toughness. No, that's not I was like, no, that's not true, right? Generally we'll try to get the things they want most of the time. Right? What's the best workout is the one that they will do again. Right? So that's day one is 45-minute walk. Non-stop. What's day two? They have 3 days, right? So what's day two?
Day is cardio, right? Nah, I just was making sure that it was like 3 days of cardio.
Anybody?
If he said whoa, then the next day, a slow way jog, like progressing to a little bit, same amount of time.
So I like where your head is at. We definitely do want to progress them to jogging, right? Because they're going to be jogging if they want to do it in under 30 minutes. Would we progress to jogging? If we think they're not ready for jogging on day one, they're probably not ready for jogging day two yet, right? Like maybe in this idea, we'll introduce it week 3. As an example, if we really don't think they're ready to jog. Now, if she does strength training on her own, maybe she is ready to jog. In which case, that's a great idea. You know? So, I would probably say if you're doing the first day all in the 80%, get some of the 20% in the middle, and then do another long duration the third day. Right? So, anyone want to elaborate on that?
Kind of like what's that front end a little bit, like go up,
Yeah, so that's an example of a type of interval. Right? Perfect. That's going to be one of the best ways to improve your endurance. Right? Your VO2 max, like the best way to improve it is through intervals. So yeah, that's just one example of running really fast and then letting yourself recover before you run really fast. So yeah,
would you be like take some time to like get never really ran much? Maybe take like teach them how to make habits.
potentially. Right? I would say that falls into the answer that you can use for almost any question is it depends. Right? Now, are you a gait expert to the point where you feel comfortable teaching someone how to run correctly? Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends how bad they are. You know? Probably. So, like, potentially, there's going to be some things that you can fix. Now, beyond that, it's up to your level of comfort and expertise. You know, like for me, I don't necessarily think that people need really fast people run weird. And you try to fix how they run, and they slow down. You know, so it's on an individual basis. But the idea of intervals being used for day two, especially like at the beginning of day two, and then maybe doing some more intervals right after that. So if we're just walking and doing intervals, we all agree that we would progress to jogging, right? Eventually. And if you're walking on the treadmill, would you have them on an incline? Yeah. So for me, I've got anyone on a treadmill, 1% incline is flat. That is just very flat. You can take that or not. So what are some strength exercises that you think are important to include in this person's program? Elaborate.
Like a lot of showing the personally strength to have to run for a long period of time. So focus on legs. I mean, of course, body model. I personally take the focus with more direction.
Yeah, so leg strength, we talked about supporting the amount of volume that you're going to put on those legs. The endurance training, you definitely want them to be strong. Right? Now, leg press, I would say there may be a place for it in there, but is it like one of the, like, unless there's a contraindication, it must be in there? No. I would say potentially not. Just because it's not as transferable as specificity. You know, like you have this kind of hunched over back position, it's not really comfortable for everybody. Whereas there are other leg exercises that work your quads that are more like translatable to a running path. Like a split squat. Right? Did we just take everybody's answer? No. I was gonna say like yeah. So like what? Elaborate. Split squat. What other kinds of probably like single glute bridges. Yeah, so y'all are all going knee dominant, right?
Hip down.
But you should probably do some hip dominant too.
Hip thrust.
Hip thrust?
Deadlift.
Deadlift. That's what I want to hear. And like what type of deadlift?
Probably split stance. I do like split stance.
Back up the microphone.
If they have a good deadlift already, sure. That's like advanced progression. So, you know, if they have good deadlifts, you may. So again, I know what that's for deadlift. Right. So those are the most joint friendly versions. Right? So barbell deadlift, we love that exercise, right? But is it, if you're trying to do injury prevention, is that the best choice? Probably not, right? You have to fit around the bar. Whereas the trap bar, that fits around you, so you just stand up like normal. It's a lot more comfortable. Plus, it actually has more quad activation, which allows you to lift a little heavier. They feel a little bit better about that, and you're using your quads a lot while you run, so a little bit of extra quad work can't really hurt. Silence, you look like you want to say something.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I agree with the trap bar that you can lift more weight, which could boost your confidence and still pump training. But that's also more of an athletic movement because there's less of the load on the spine.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. Any other strength exercises? So we have, well, deadlift, lunge, family, right, split squat. Depending on who they are and what level they are, some version of a progressed or regressed lunge. Right? Some version of a joint friendly deadlift. Hip dominant, movement. Yeah. So y'all haven't said anything about upper body. I know you guys are going to train her about the body.
So bicep, of course, is running. Someone you have to move your arms at a certain point, so you have to maintain that also.
Yeah. So I think you definitely should work the shoulders and the biceps. 100%. It may even be appropriate to do isolation bicep exercises, but that may not be the most efficient way to get the bicep movement in there. So it's just something to keep in mind, right? If somebody's goals are aesthetic, I would say definitely biceps isolate a lot, right? But if their goal is for endurance to run a race, you should still work their biceps. It's going to help them be more efficient. But would I spend time trying to isolate their biceps? That wouldn't be the top of my priorities, right? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's not a family. Copenhagen. Is everybody familiar with this? Copenhagen side plan. Does everyone know what this is? So, I would like to demonstrate this. Justin's gonna get a couple of blocks. So, first, I'm gonna explain it, because this is how you introduce a new exercise. You either explain it or demonstrate it, then you either explain it or demonstrate it, and then you do both at the same time. Right? So, Copenhagen side plank. We're gonna do straight leg variation, some beast. Arm straight leg. Right? So the idea is adductors are driving down, right here. You also have your obliques on the opposite side and your shoulder pushing. So do we know anything that travels like that along the body? It's one of the spiraling oblique things, right? Like fascia, right? Which connects all of our muscles together. There's a theory that we have one muscle with 400 pockets. Yeah. So it's all connected. Right? So these muscles work together because they're all connected. So when we work them out together, we're strengthening the whole pattern that's going to propel us when we run. Right? So it's a great exercise. We should look at different ways of training fascial slings. That's maybe a little bit more advanced concept, but we can talk about that more in advance. We're right on time as usual. So thank you guys for your participation. I hope that we all got out of this activity that we have a little bit of understanding about the endurance training principles. And when you look at the program portal, you can apply some of these principles to understand what you're looking at. And also understand who would be appropriate to select an endurance program for. Now moving forward, next week, we're going to go through one of these programs out on the floor, as you guys want to do, and that'll be a lot of fun. Before we finish, does anyone have any questions? All right, great job, everybody.